Well, good morning and welcome to this morning's reflection. I hope that you had a very good day yesterday and are feeling rested as we come to the second half of the week. I have been on a very slow journey through the books of Genesis and Matthew, just reading one verse or perhaps two verses, maybe three sometimes at a time, and just allowing those verses to sit with me and seeking to understand what God is saying to me through those particular scriptures. Today I was reading Genesis chapter 8 and verse 13, and it reads as such. And as I read it, I want you to notice what stands out for you, because that's significant. What grasps your attention? In the 601st year of Noah's life, on the first day of the first month, the flood dried up. Noah opened the hatch of the ship and saw dry ground. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. What stood out for you? What stood out for me was that the hatch of the ship was opened and Noah saw dried ground. You know, we all encounter floods. We all have flood times in our lives. Times when life isn't as we would have it be. Times when life as we know it might be washed away. Times when we lose those things and those people that are so dear to our hearts. Or perhaps you may lose a limb or encounter some increasing fragility or infirmity in your life. Perhaps the flood sweeps away your hope, sweeps away your financial security. Perhaps the flood sweeps away your faith, sweeps away important relationships. We all encounter devastating floods, utterly devastating. But God helps us to stay afloat during those times of flood. For Noah, he had him build an ark. It was Noah's obedience to God that meant he was ready for what was coming. What is God calling you to do now in this moment? What is He calling you to do that could be a preparation for the coming flood? For a coming period of difficulty? And are you listening to His call on your life? Perhaps He is calling you to change your way of living or to make some very difficult decisions. Or perhaps simply to live more frugally and more sustainably. We are not to do these things as we prepare for the future out of fear, but rather because we have a sense of God calling us to take action that might ultimately help us to stay afloat in difficult times. Noah didn't build an ark because he was scared. He built an ark because he trusted God. Sometimes God's plan to help us keep afloat may seem illogical, and it may not even be particularly attractive. Here, go and live in a ship, and when you add up all the time spent, Noah was in the ark for nearly a year. Imagine, go and spend a year in a dark, smelly boat. So sometimes God's plan for us to stay afloat can be incredibly uncomfortable and not what we would have chosen. So after a year of being tossed about like a duck in a bathtub, the ark is opened and Noah steps out onto dry land. Noah steps out onto dry land. If you are in a smelly ark amidst the flood, do what must be done in that space. What would Noah have done? He would have cared for the animals. Who are you called to care for in the midst of your flood? The thing is, when we are in the midst of a flood, that is when each day we must do what needs to be done. We must live our lives of love in the midst of the flood. We must get up and do what we are called to do. The time will come when the flood subsides and the door opens and we can step out onto dry land. So when we are in the midst of the flood, all we can do is trust God's provision for us and trust that the door will ultimately open. So today, spend time reflecting on the floods of your life and the provision God made for you in the midst of those floods. And if you are in a flood at the moment, know too that the door will open and you will step out onto dry land. May you be blessed today. Amen.